Hey, how's it going? My name is Wes. Welcome back to another lesson. Today's lesson is a bit different than the normal purple lessons we look at, because in today's lesson I actually want to talk a little bit more about the different types of Spanish. I've already talked about this a little bit, but I want to go a bit more into depth about this topic. So without further ado, let's get into today's lesson. Alright, so different types of Spanish. So what do I mean by that? Well, Spanish, the language Spanish, is spoken in many different countries across the globe. And what's very important to understand about Spanish as a language is that each country and region in which Spanish is spoken has its own accents and vocabulary. And we already saw some examples of this. So for example, for the English word pen, there's different ways of saying it depending on in which Spanish-speaking country you're in. So for example, when you're in Spain, pen, the word for pen is bolígrafo. However, if you move to Mexico, for example, then pen is pronounced as pluma. Pluma. Or if you're in Colombia, you most likely will hear esfero. Esfero. But then when you move to Argentina, you will hear lapicera. Lapicera. So all of these words all mean the same thing. They all mean pen. However, the word that you use to describe the pen differs depending on in which country you're in. And this is not just true for words like pen, for example, but this also applies to different ways of greeting. So for example, when I want to say, how's it going? In Spain, for example, you could say, ¿qué pasa? ¿Qué pasa? But then when you move to different countries, you might also hear different expressions. For example, ¿cómo es? Or ¿qué bola? Or ¿qué onda? Or you might even hear cuibo, which all mean something along the lines of, how's it going? So again, here we see that depending on which country or region you're in, not only are the words different, but also the way of expressing, so for example, greeting people. And actually not just the vocabulary, so not just the words are different depending on where you go, but also the sounds of words and letter are also different depending on which country or even which region you're in. And originally what I wanted to do in this lesson was to show you different clips of popular movies and series in Spanish from different countries or regions, so that you could hear the differences in pronunciation. But since I'm uploading this video online for you and other people to watch, I can unfortunately not use these clips because they are copyrighted. But I found a really good video online that explains the different accents from different Spanish-speaking countries. So what I'll do is I'll put a link to that video in the reference sheet of this video, so you can simply download the reference sheet and then click on the link if you're interested into diving into the different accents of the Spanish language. So make sure to download the reference sheet and click on the link that's in the reference sheet if you want to dive further into the different accents and understand the different accents from different Spanish countries and regions. Hey, what's up? It's Wes from the future. I'm sorry to interrupt this video. I just wanted to let you know that I also have a Patreon where you can get early access to the next video lessons. All you have to do is to click on the link in the description, which will take you to my Patreon page where you can sign up for early access to the next lessons. Because here on YouTube, I only upload one new video every week. So if you don't want to wait for a new lesson to appear and you already want to watch all of the new lessons, then you can do so by going to my Patreon. Alright, that's it for this short interruption. I'm sorry. Let's get back to the video. Alright, so then to end this lesson, as we saw in this lesson, Spanish is spoken in many different countries. Each country and region has its own accents and vocabulary, and even, for example, past tenses of verbs are different depending on in which country you're in. So now a very logical question that you might ask yourself is, Wes, there are so many different types of Spanish. How do I know which Spanish I should learn? Which Spanish should I learn? And honestly, that's a very good question because there is so many different types of Spanish to learn. My advice would be to study or take over the Spanish from the country or the region that you will live in or travel to. And this course will give you a very solid foundation of all the different vocabulary, grammar, and little tips and tricks. But of course, as soon as you start talking to the local people in your area, you will most likely hear some words and phrases that you've never had in this course. And that is actually the fun part of the Spanish language, just like the English language. When you're used to American English and you go to Australia, for example, it can be very funny to hear different words which mean the same thing, and the same thing goes for Spanish. However, what's good to know is that if you follow this course and you learn the words that we learn in this course, people from all across the globe that speak Spanish will still be able to understand you. So if you learn el zumo de naranja and you order el zumo de naranja In Colombia, for example, they will most likely not say el zumo, but el jugo de naranja. But it's not a problem because they will still understand you. And then once you're there, you will pick up that everyone says el jugo instead of el zumo. And so now you yourself can also change your vocabulary a little bit. All right, so that's actually it for this lesson. I hope that this was helpful to you. I hope that you enjoyed watching these little videos. I wanted to include something to explain the different accents and tonation a bit better. If you have any questions, please let me know. Also, for anything regarding learning Spanish, you can always go to my website, SpanishWithWes.com. And just as a reminder, you're already about to start lesson number 31. So you're doing amazing. Let's keep it going. All right, that's it for this lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. As always, adios, hasta luego, hasta la próxima. Adios.